Good morning, everyone, and welcome to FPC Radio Live. It is Thursday, October the 5th, and we are steamrolling into Week 5 in the NFL and getting pretty excited for that. Missed a couple days this week. A little technical issues prevented us from being on the air, but don't fret, people. We are here. We are live, and by we, I mean myself and Mr. John Sapichetti. John, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and get the hell out of here, Roger Maris Jr. I am sick and tired of hearing from you.
I guess so. Yeah, you're more fired up than I am. And, Barry Bonds is my all-time favorite athlete, and I think he's the greatest player in the history of baseball, at least in the discussion with Babe Ruth and Willie Mays. And, Roger Maris Jr. is back in the news because now Aaron Judge is the American League home run leader, single season, all-time
clean record.
Right, because we know that for a fact. We've all seen whatever testing they're doing, whatever the case is. 15 years ago, the Yankees wanted to put into the contract of Alex Rodriguez and wanted to promote the fact that he would set the single-season record and the career home run record, and it would be back with the Yankees. And we know how that ended. A-Rod sat out for more than a year because he was suspended. So, yeah, the whole PED thing gets tiring after a while. Whatever the case is, the way I look at it is that, you know who the all-time passing touchdown leader is in the NFC, don't you? Or the single season passing TD holder in the NFC is, right? Because this is pretty much what Aaron Judge has done. He's now the seventh best season ever by a home run hitter, behind 3 Sammy Sosa seasons, 2 Mark McGwire's seasons, and also Barry Bonds' season, which is the all-time single-season record. But it's Drew Brees with 491 touchdown passes in the NFC. He's the all-time NFC leader. And Aaron Rodgers with 48 home runs. Well, I think Aaron could hit 48 home runs without much of a problem.
Yeah, but Aaron Rodgers with 1-yard line.
Yeah, oh my God. Oh, that hurt.
I've had a lot of caffeine today. I'm on fire.
I think so. Wow. He's got the single season touchdown record in the NFC with 48. So let's say this year Jared Goff or someone gets to 49 touchdown passes. Were they going to stop the game, celebrate that he's now the NFC leader among single season touchdown passes?
If it was Drew Brees, they probably would. Actually, if you think
did,
about
right?
it.
Yeah, there was a period of time where they were stopping the game every 5 minutes for him for a completion or a drop or whatever.
Well,
but I get that it's Aaron Judge is a popular guy and it's the Yankees and all that stuff. I get all that, and it was a cool moment, But please,
honestly,
he's not the whole come later.
I think the person who cares about this the least is probably Aaron Judge. I kind of feel bad for the guy because I don't feel like he's the one that's really pushing this. And I brought up Roger Maris Jr. because, I'm sitting there thinking, has anyone thought, of course, Roger Maris Jr. thinks that Roger Maris Sr. had the real home run record.
Right.
Of course he does. You know what I mean? And it's to get up there and again, become the gatekeeper for Major League Baseball. And that's, we've talked about that before, not just in this situation, but it is centered quite a bit around the steroid abuse era, just because there seems to be this blind spot, especially from people that were involved in the business. Because let's not forget, it wasn't just the players. It was the league. It was the coaches. It was the fans. Everyone was complicit in this era because it wasn't just 1 or 2 guys. It was rampant. And this isn't to put out some blanket accusations about Aaron Judge or any player that came before him. But the reality of it is we don't know who was clean and who was not. So who are you to say, Roger Maris Jr., that this is the clean record? And first of all, again, what is clean? Well, clean is it depends on how hypocritical you want to be. Because I see people out there, writers that were around and celebrated the Mark McGwires, the Barry Bonds, the Sammy Sosas, now, getting up on their soapbox talking about, oh, this is not the real record. No, it is the real record. Because guess what? When I look up who hit the most home runs in a season, guess what comes up? Barry Bonds. Not Aaron Judge. Barry Bonds. Who has the most home runs in Major League Baseball history? Well, guess what? It's Barry Bonds. That's there. That record exists. It's not made up. It's not, there at your convenience. It's there. So again, it's exhausting because deep down I do still love baseball. I do. Um, but it's by far the most frustrating league. This counts hockey, who, talk about not knowing how to kind of market your product. They've gotten a lot better, but baseball has such an advantage that they're just throwing out the door because they have no idea what they're doing, and they seem to want to trip over their own feet every single time that there's an opportunity to
Mhm.
grow the game. Like how
Yep.
they had a I think I mentioned it before. Albert Pujols over 700 home runs. Shohei Ohtani, doing what he's doing. Aaron Judge, and again, I'm not like 62 home runs is impressive. I'm not saying it's not, and it's like it should be celebrated, but not in the way that it was and how it's been kind of forced down people's throats by the same people that celebrated Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa. So to me, there's reasons why those people aren't in the Hall of Fame. There's reasons why we're getting this debate now, and it's not because they did steroids. It's because, well, the people that are in charge of those debates and those discussions to get into the Hall of Fame are sanctimonious hypocrites, John, because that's all they are.
And big Bruce Springsteen fans, which
Yeah.
is a good thing because I too am a big Bruce Springsteen fan. But I wonder what the narrative would be if Bonds never set the record and it was Mark McGwire with 70 home runs. I think it would have been a little bit different because there was a love fest in 1998 with McGwire and Sosa, right? But
Yeah.
3 years later, Bonds is the most despised athlete I think I've ever seen.
Mhm.
Like when I tell someone that Barry Bonds is my favorite athlete of all time, I would probably be better off telling them that Richard Nixon is my favorite all-time president, or that I really thought Saddam Hussein wasn't all that bad of a guy. Like I just think that I mean, can you think of an athlete more despised than Barry Bonds?
No,
Seriously, I mean, there's like
not in my
there's like
lifetime.
there's 8 of us that like the guy, right? And I don't even know if family members even like him. But as a baseball player, he's the best I've ever seen. And I just think that if it was someone else, it wouldn't be this big a deal. But it's just like, oh my God, that guy holds the records, and everybody hates the guy, right? So that's what the pushback is. If McGwire still has the record with 70, I think it would have been a little bit different. And Roger Maris Jr. really would have been a hypocrite because in the summer of '98, he was all over McGwire and Sosa. He was there celebrating with them and hugging them and all that stuff. And
I've seen that, and I love the response of, well, we didn't really know. Yes, we did. Come
of
on.
course.
Yeah, stop again. This is what Major League Baseball is doing. What we didn't know. No, you did know. And you were more than happy to watch that help this game survive, because without it, I mean, who knows? I know sometimes, like, the longer we go, the more hyperbolic the summer the summer of '98 saved baseball. In a way, it did. I mean, the sport was, and just as well as anyone, because again, obviously you're older than me, so there was more of you can make more of a reference to that time. But it did. I mean, again, the same people that were promoting it, were propping it up, who were celebrating it, are some of the same people that are now sitting there saying, this is the clean record, blah, 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 blah. And I'm so sick of it, because it speaks to some of my frustration about baseball, and particularly the Hall of Fame. Because I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I believe that all these steroid, if they're worthy, they need to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't want to hear about, like, oh, well, they did it. No. Again, the steroid abuse was so rampant during that time. Pitchers, hitters, and guess what? We're only focused on the best of the best. We're not talking about all the other guys that took these things and didn't hit all these home runs. I mean, it was part of baseball. And if you're having a Hall of Fame that celebrates the history of the game, you need stuff in it, good or bad. I mean, you can't dictate how you're going to tell the history of the game. Like, history is history. You can't pick and choose what you say, and you certainly can't avoid and ignore what happened during that time, good or bad, however you want to view it, and sit there and say, oh no, they're not going into the Hall of Fame because they use steroids. No, get off your high horse and realize, writers, I'm talking about the Hall of Fame voters, it's not about you. It's not about you. I shouldn't know who the Hall of Fame voters are. I shouldn't have to hear about Tom Verducci's thoughts on what the clean record is. I don't care because it's not up to you. The record exists. It's Barry Bonds. It's Mark McGwire. It's Sammy Sosa. Those things happened. And anyone out there that's trying to deny that is just basically a whiner. I mean, because that's all it's coming across to me. Like every time I see Roger Maris Jr. tweet, I hear like baby crying in the background, John. I mean, that's
Yep.
all it is because I'm just looking at it as just like this is a sore loser mentality. And it's a shame because I can't imagine his father would be proud of it because who knows what the hell he took. The funny thing is, and people have been bringing this up, and actually you're the one who kind of turned me on to this last week, but people are bringing up, well, look at how many home runs Barry Bonds hit and how he never hit that number again, blah, blah, blah. Well, have you seen Roger Maris's career home run totals throughout his career?
No one hit that number again, by the way.
Yeah, no one hit that number again.
And no one will hit that number
exactly. Again. But like, I'm sitting here thinking like, man, like, do at least a little bit, because like they're basically alluding to the fact that he had like that blow up. I mean, obviously like he had a lot of heavy home run seasons, but relative to 72, it was a far cry from that number in most of his seasons. And that was the same thing with Roger Maris. He had one season where he hit the 61 home runs, and what did he average before that? Like under 30. You know what I mean? So
he doesn't even have 300 career home runs.
Yeah.
And by the way, Roger's not in the Hall of Fame. And again, I don't want to disparage him and his accomplishments. He was a wonderful baseball player. Yeah. But he was never the best player on his team. It was actually Mickey Mantle, who was supposed to be the one to break the record. In fact, it wasn't like a love fest in 1961 either. It was supposed to be Mantle, not Roger Maris. But I mean, look, baseball's littered with all this. Brady Anderson hit 50 home runs in 1996. He really never hit more than 24
Kyle
ever
Schwarber
again.
Just hit 50 home runs, John, this year.
This year is right around 50, right? I mean, so this is what happens. Davey Johnson, here's one of my favorite all-time things. I don't think he ever hit more than 14 home runs. He hit 40-plus home runs in 1973. He was playing in a lineup with Henry Aaron and Darrell Evans. They all hit 40. And then you factor in ballparks and all of that stuff. Back to the steroid issue, David Ortiz was on the same Mitchell report that Barry Bonds was on. That's fact. Ortiz sailed into the Hall of Fame because people love him. He's baseball's Santa Claus, as he should have. But does anybody with a straight face think that David Ortiz was a better player than Barry Bonds? David Ortiz would laugh at that notion. So they were both on the Mitchell report, but the fact is that people love David Ortiz. People despise Barry Bonds. One's in the Hall of Fame, one's not.
Yeah, and look, success has something to do with it. Obviously, Ortiz having won multiple awards and being obviously a major factor in that is going to, and again, personality wise, I mean, you smooze up to the media, they're going to like you more. It's just how it is. It shouldn't be, but it is how it is. Like, and I say this about the Hall of Fame, and anyone out there saying, oh, they shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, I say go screw, because they should. I mean, you have a guy like Barry Bonds, and the fact that he's not in the Hall it's a travesty, really. I mean, when it comes to travesties in sports that don't involve like the physical life and death of a person, I mean, this is a travesty. This is a travesty as much as you can possibly get when it comes to this whole situation. And look, I mean, again, going back to how you have to tell the whole history, you can't just pick and choose what you want to show, because that's not really history. That's fiction, all these guys be in the Hall of Fame. I don't care, but make note of the accusations and the situations that they went through. Sure. That's fine with me. I say it all the time. A scarlet letter. I mean, maybe I'm outdating myself with that reference there, but give them that big scarlet letter S, right on their chest, in theory, obviously not really, but
baseball loves asterisks. I mean, there's an asterisk with Roger Maris's record for years because he hit 61 home runs in 162 game schedule, and Babe hit 60 in 154 game schedule. So they had that asterisk. I mean, football never goes there. I know I don't want to go into the weeds with this, but I know Eric Dickerson holds the record for most rushing yards in a season. He did it in a 16-game season. J Simpson, and I go talk about someone who's despised. Yeah. Although I think Bonds is even more despised than J Simpson, if that's possible.
I was going to say, J Simpson is kind of like that, like, I don't want to say him from my perspective, but he's kind of turned into kind of a, I don't know. I can't describe. Anyway, yeah, I think Barry Bonds
But
actually might be more hated, as crazy as it sounds.
without question. Oh God, yeah, because there's actually people that defend O.J. Simpson. So Eric Dickerson holds the record, most rushing yards in a season, 2105. OJ had 2,003 yards in a 14-game schedule.
Yeah.
I've always felt that it's like really OJ's record, that 14-game schedule. If he'd played 2 more games, he would have been up over 2,300 yards. But again, football doesn't get into all of that. Baseball is based around numbers. I get that. But to me, to not have the best player, at least I've ever seen, and I think the best player in the history of the sport, not in the Hall of Fame, also the best pitcher I've ever seen, and Roger Clemens is not in there. And the all-time hits leader is not in there. The guy did get 4,256 hits. I mean, like he did that.
And going, yeah, right. And that's another discussion, that we can have on another day. Because I agree. Again, I mean, how I'm just putting it out there like that. I was like, how can imagine that the home run leader, the hits leader, like that's absurd.
And the best pitcher of the last 50 years.
None of them are in the Hall of
Clemens in there because talk about despised athletes. Roger Clemens. I mean, Rose has got like defenders because people love the way he played, and he's really polarized because there are a lot of people that love Pete Rose, and then a lot that don't. And I think Rose actually benefits by not being in the Hall of Fame. He makes more money signing autographs in and around Cooperstown.
That's kind of his brand now,
That's his brand now. Well, the other 2 guys made enough money as players that they would prefer that they got into the Hall of Fame. That'd be kind of like the icing on the cake for their great careers.
Oh yeah, and look, I mean, as much as they want to pretend like these things didn't happen, and this is clean, this is that. I mean, the reality of it is it did happen. You can't just erase it and. I don't know. It's just so silly to me, John. I can't get, and it is frustrating. Like at first it was silly, then it was frustrating because again it's gatekeeping. And look, I mean, you talk like people want to discuss the records, whether it's this game or that. I don't really care about that. I mean, look, you play the cards you're dealt, and if you break the record, you break the record. Life isn't fair. You know what I mean? Not everyone's going to have the exact same number of rushing attempts or the exact same number at bats. It's about actually doing it. Like I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, this person had this because I don't know the future. I mean, maybe OJ does, or maybe OJ somehow doesn't rush for 50 yards over to. I mean, again, that seems impossible, but you know what I mean. I'm just saying, like, there's no guarantees, and I'm not going to sit here and go through all these records and say, well, he did it in this and he did it in that. And even then, John, I can kind of understand trying to decipher, situations where games, there's a different number of games, there's different rules, that type of thing. I get that. I think that's a legitimate conversation. Now, I'm not going to sit there and, do, well, if he did this or if he did that, then I'm going to do this. No, I won't go that far, but I will have that discussion. The difference here, John, is this is just people whining and being children about something they don't think is right. Well, sorry, tough bleep, it's not up to you, Roger Maris Jr. It's not up to you, Bob 7267 on Twitter. Like it just doesn't matter.
Is that a real account?
I don't know. It might be. Probably. Follow it.
Oh, okay. Because I know you have a lot of accounts that you follow and fight with. I don't pay attention as much, but I do appreciate you coming to the support of my favorite athlete of all time.
I'm right there with you, man. I feel very strongly about this, even though I don't, we don't talk a whole lot about baseball. This is something that I definitely, look, I remember it. I watched it. I lived it, and I can't imagine that people, especially people involved in this game, would just completely just act like it just didn't happen. And to me, it's just one of the reasons why baseball just gets in its own way.
And I was so impressed how Bonds, broke the record and then set the record. He hit 4 home runs in his final 9 at-bats in 2001. Number 70, 71, 72, and 73 came over 9 at-bats. I mean, he did it in style where Judge, it took him a while. It was getting kind of hairy there that, is he going to do it? He hit it in game 161. And look, there's a lot of pressure doing this, and I like Aaron Judge a lot. In fact, I do too. San Francisco. He's so likable, and I hope he signs with the San Francisco Giants. He's from Northern California. but I guess he was a Red Sox fan, and the Yankees and Mets are going to get in a bidding war for him. And you're right; it didn't seem like he was concerned with who hit more home runs because he's laughing all the way to the bank. I mean, minimum 8 to 10 years, 40 to 45 million a year is going to be the deal that he signs in a few months. So he's quite content with that. And again, I think he's probably the face of baseball at this point because Mike Trout's the best player, but I wouldn't know him if he bumped into me. Shohei Ohtani's phenomenal, but when do we ever watch the Angels play?
The Angels are an
like
enigma. Think about how many great players they've had and how consistently bad they've been.
Yeah, they went to one World Series and they cost me a lot of money back in 2002.
Well, hopefully, what's something that's not going to cost someone a lot of money is Tom Brady's current personal situation, which we're not going to comment on, aside from this one little comment that I'm going to make right now, obviously. But it's none of our damn business. I mean, I woke up this morning, John, to see that there are. I mean, it's amazing, John, the many hats people on Twitter wear. They're economic experts, they're coaching experts, they're GMs, armchair GMs, and apparently marriage counselors, or at least
doctors.
And doctors.
Well.
Doctors. I mean, everyone's a doctor, John. Come on. All you got to do is go to.
I had an ankle sprain, and I was able to go back onto the court in a week. Why can't Mac Jones?
Yeah.
Well, it's a different level of. I went through this last year with LeBron James. I'm fighting with people who go, "It's a high ankle sprain. Why is he missing any time?" I don't know. I mean, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah,
I mean,
and everyone's
6'9", 260 pounds, playing in the NBA. It's a little bit different.
Well, and look, and kind of, on a serious note, look, it really just doesn't concern us. I mean, who knows what's going on? I mean, for all we know, it's an amicable, just like Jerry and Jeannie, maybe they just came to a decision one day at the coffee shop and just was like, you know what, I'm done. And they're like, thank you very much, and move on. But from a football standpoint, though, I do look at this and I say, he's got his eyes playing beyond this season, doesn't he? It feels like it, right?
I'm wondering about that, Ian. I think, I've always I put 5 athletes in this category of sociopaths, and I mean it as a compliment, right? And Brady and Barry Bonds are 2 of them. Mm-hmm. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Tiger Woods are the others. And part of being there with the mentality they have is they can play through anything. I just think this whole thing has kind of sapped a lot of energy out of him. Now, maybe when it's all done and it's settled, he goes back to being a maniac, right? But I think this is really, from people I talk to that go through divorces, it's gut-wrenching. And no matter what the situation is, right?
Absolutely. And
especially when you get kids involved, that makes it even more difficult. So on the surface, I say, the guy's going to play till 50 now because he has no one to stop him.
Well, and look, I mean, I no doubt about it. This, I mean, even the greatest athletes in the, this is a emotional time for sure. But I mean, based on what I've seen, and certainly, John, and on a side note, I think they finally listened to me. Right? I think I was right about what the Bucs offense had to do, by the way, on a side note.
Yes.
Yep. But
now you got to fix the defense, though. That's the problem.
I don't care about defense. It's not defense that wins championships in this game. It's offense and quarterbacks.
Well, it's tough when you give up 44 or 41 points.
It's tough when when unfortunately they have 2 very short fields and whatever. But what I was getting at is like, look, obviously I'm basing this on what we've seen through 4 weeks, and I've obviously gotten into discussions about this on Twitter with people because people love to talk to me about Tom Brady. It just seems to be what they want to do, but
I haven't noticed.
No, I haven't. Despite the down numbers, I mean, and again, we saw this very clearly on Sunday against the Chiefs. He's fine. He's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And this was more so an issue about play calling. And I said, like, forget about the injuries. Because we saw it even last week, not against the Chiefs, but against Green Bay, with, Brashad Perriman being your number 1 receiver. End of half and end of the game. Guess what? Well, they decided to go into the old Bucs offense where it was being driven by his arm. And guess what? They looked like that well-oiled machine. Forget who was on the field. It doesn't matter. Tom Brady's going to make it work. I mean, it helps when Mike Evans is out there and Chris Godwin and Julio Jones. It's definitely better. But, like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, I get the feeling, and like, he was always kind of, he hasn't even said that this was going to officially be his last season. So the more I think about it, I'm like, man, if he's going to keep playing at this level, and at this point, if his quote unquote, family isn't preventing him from playing, and look, we just saw all his kids at the game like last week. So I save me or spare me the, and I'm not you because I'm talking about people out there on Twitter. Spare me the, he hates his family stuff because I mean, he obviously loves his kids and everything like that, and we just don't know. I mean, again, we're not there, we're not in the room with them, so I don't really care what they're going through as long, that's their business. On the football field,
he's not Aaron. He's not Aaron Rodgers, who would clearly hate his kids if he had it.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'm not being funny. I'm not being hyperbolic. It might happen.
And who knows exactly? And it's like, look, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and like, there's people out there pretending like, or acting like they're literally in the room or talking to Giselle every night. And it's just like, no, you're some random person on Twitter. Like, get your drama fix elsewhere. There's plenty of television shows like The Bachelor or The Kardashians. I'm pretty sure that will get your fix. But from a football standpoint, I'm sitting here thinking like, all right, I feel like he's eyeing on playing longer than what he has, and why not? I mean, look, I asked the question, like, people, I see people out there, oh, he should have retired. My simple question is why? It was like, oh, he's accomplished everything he wants. How do you know that? Maybe he just wants to play.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get it. I understand it's a hard thing for athletes to give up the only thing they know. And if you're playing at a high level and you feel like you're healthy enough, by all means. So like if you want to play, play. And I think that's kind of the mentality that Brady has. And give credit where credit's due. He's been very clear about this from the get-go. How many interviews has he done where he says, when he's listing everything, football always comes first. Like football has always been his first. And I'm not saying that to say like, he's a neglectful father because, again, seen that on Twitter already. Like he's some deadbeat dad. And I'm like, oh, come on, people, get a life. But from me looking at this, I'm like, maybe this opens the door for him playing a little bit longer. And, for me as a fan, I'm all for it. That's obviously his decision and only going to be his decision. No one else's.
The question would be where? I mean, I wouldn't doubt that Tom Brady's playing next year. Yeah, well, here's my scenario. This is the craziest scenario ever.
John, don't get me excited. Don't get me excited.
Okay, no.
I don't want to get my hopes up.
Here's what's going to happen, okay? He's going to get a hold of Kraft. They're going to kiss and make up because, Kraft has always looked at him as his fifth son, but he also looked at Drew Bledsoe as his fifth son, and apparently Mike Reese is his fifth son. So, he's got a lot of fifth sons.
His sons as Antonio Cromartie.
Exactly right. Yeah, Bob Kraft and his many sons. So he talks his way back. He doesn't have to talk his way back, but he wants to come back here, but he doesn't want Belichick. Belichick moves and becomes the new head coach of the Green Bay Packers. So he can spend time with his favorite quarterback, Aaron Rodgers.
All right.
Okay? And now both Rodgers and Belichick, who are both incredibly spiteful, right? And then next year, we have a Patriots-Packers Super Bowl finally with Belichick coaching Rodgers, and I don't know who coaching Tom Brady. Maybe he'll be a player coach a la Bill Russell in the late 60s. That's my perfect scenario. I can see
it. I was with you for about the first 10%, and then it just kind of went off the rails for me there. Because, obviously, we kind of have fun with it. I mean, I don't believe as much of the tension as you buy into, which is fine. I mean, that's to each his own. It's up to your own instincts to decide what is truth there. But look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's a large percent. I mean, I would imagine if that was the case, this would be a multi-year commitment because you're not going to.
Yeah.
I know. We still don't know if Mac Jones is the answer, but he certainly hasn't done enough to lose his job, and by any stretch of the imagination. So, like, so I don't know what the motivation is going to be for next season. I mean, it's a long way to go between now and then. But, John, it would be nice. It would be very, put a little capper on it for him to maybe finish his career out there. And look, I would obviously, again, from a fan's perspective, then this is what I'm, my fan perspective when it comes to watching Brady. I would love that. That would be great. I would be excited. I would, all that stuff. I don't think it's going to happen. Talk to me and towards the off season when we know a little bit more about all this. But the reality of it is he's on a Super Bowl contending team right now, and what I've seen so far from them is, look, clearly a team that's suffered injuries. And for all you advanced stat nerds out there, you can look at their wins above replacement stat, and due to injuries, and you look at the Bucs offense, and it's clearly outpacing everyone else. And it's obvious. I mean, you miss guys like I think they count missed games as quote unquote injuries in this situation. So you miss Mike Evans, you miss Chris Godwin, no Julio Jones. You have multiple alignment out. But like I said, John, forget all that. I don't care. I'm not making excuses for them missing players. I just hated the play calling. And what we saw on Sunday against the Chiefs was, first of all, we saw him throw 26 straight passes at one point, and the Chiefs couldn't stop it. Like, I know that's kind of being lost in all of this because, well, the Chiefs won, and they won pretty big, and rightfully so. And there's obviously some, highlight reel plays from Patrick Mahomes that people get all, out of sorts about and kind of forget everything else. But the reality of it was both those quarterbacks were phenomenal on Sunday. I mean, obviously folks are, very the same people that were, will prop up Aaron Rodgers for being better or Patrick Mahomes for having a great Super Bowl 55 are now saying that Tom Brady, this is the new thing though, John, Tom Brady stat padded for the entire game, John. He stat padded. Because this is I know I'm kind of going off the rails a little bit, but now I just remembered some of the most ridiculous things I had. So I was having people tell me that at 21-3 or whatever it was, the game was over, or 17 points down, the game was over. And I'm like, first of all, just in general, the whole landscape of the NFL, we see comebacks like that, I feel like, every week. Second.
Yeah, usually from the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was going to say, second.
He hasn't done it all that often, right?
Five real games ago for both of these teams, John. And this is the funniest part about it. Oh, there's no way they would come back. 5 games ago, the Chiefs blew a 21-3 lead.
Yeah.
And the Bucs came back down 27-3. So spare me it's impossible, so now all this is garbage time talk. Because, again, It's just silly. And what I saw was 2 great quarterbacks go at it. And, again, I was thrilled. Like, not being a actual Bucs fan, it's great to be emotionally taken out of their wins and losses, because I've been pounding the pavement really since last season to fix the play calling with this team, because it's been so frustrating and it feels like it's almost counterproductive. We saw, again, exactly what I wanted to see. And I'm not, trust me, I'm not right a lot, John, but I've been right every single turn when it comes to this Brady and Bucs duo. And if you want to win games, Tampa, you're not a ground and pound team. You're not, we win through our defense. No, you win through your offense and the best quarterback in the league, because what I see is a guy that still, I don't know how, I just don't know how he physically does it, how he is physically capable of doing what he does now, just as he was last year, the year before, when he was 26, 35. It doesn't matter. He's still doing the same
he's better
things.
than when he was 26.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing. He's better now than he was at 26. I don't even think that's – I mean, again, the sport changed. 2003 was a little bit different than 2022. The way the sport's played, I get that.
Well, oftentimes, like, as you age, maybe your the smarts get better, but you physically decline. He's actually almost physically grown. Like I made a statement a few years ago that I thought he was actually faster now, and I think we've seen that. I know the play didn't count, but that little tuck and run scramble was pretty impressive for a 45-year-old man. And again, this is where these conversations get off base, because like we, obviously I'm sitting there watching that little flick pass from Patrick Mahomes. I'm like, okay, this is going to be insufferable on Twitter all week, because now it's no one's better than Patrick Mahomes. And I'm like, I can point to like 6 quarterbacks last week that were better than Patrick Mahomes. But, again, that's it is what it is, where it's a highlight reel thing, and that's what people are enamored about. But
didn't Brett Favre do that a lot?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
I do remember that. Brett Favre used to do that stuff all the time.
Well, trust me, people, we hear it all the time. Oh, he's doing things we've never seen. No, he's doing things that we've seen plenty of. It's just, and I'm not sitting here to try to say it's not impressive. It is impressive, but it doesn't. Like, I don't want to get into an all-time quarterback debate because it's like, again, we don't have that much time left, so I'm going to spare us that pain for a little bit. But I look at this and I'm like, this is where those silly conversations come into play, where it's like Patrick Mahomes does things Brady can't. Like what? And they're like, oh, well, and then it's usually a response like, they're very specific, John. Like, oh, can he roll out and throw across his body and off like his left foot? I'm like, why would he? Why would he display any sort of poor quarterback mechanics? So like they count that against Tom because in their mind, it's somehow indicative of great quarterback play when it's really not. And it's like, then I point to like, well, did you see him run? People act like he can't run. And like, he's what I will make the case that he is the most mobile quarterback inside the pocket because it's not about running. It's quarterback. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about a track athlete. So I don't know why so much value gets put in the legs of a quarterback and not in the right way. Like there's a lot of value in the legs of a quarterback, but it's all about mechanics. And Tom Brady does that to perfection. So, again, I'm sitting here thinking about these silly debates we have about these quarterbacks and, Patrick Mahomes and being this much better than everyone else. And it's like, I'm going through a list, and just last week, it's like you can pinpoint a couple other performances, even in that own game, that you could argue were better than his. Because the reality of it was, it's like, okay, for everything Tom Brady got criticized for his entire career, or at least the narrative around him, dinking and dunking and all that stuff, you should see Patrick Mahomes' pass chart. It doesn't really extend too far past 10 yards. And that was something that for years, it was always like, oh, Tom's just a dink and dunk guy. Look at his average. Now it's like, oh, Patrick Mahomes, most talented guy. It's just get your argument straight, folks. All right. Let's kind of get a little. I feel like we're never going to get that balance back anymore, John. It's like we're on like those old carnival ship rides that swing back and forth, where it's like, the ship goes all the way up and then swings back. That's what we're at. And it's a pendulum and there's no way to stop it. And, I don't think we're ever going to come to a conclusion, because the worst part is like, you got people like Marcus Spears up on TV the other day talking about how, well, Tom Brady's always had a really great running game to help him. I mean, I'm like, on what planet are you living on that's what you believe? And it's like, but unfortunately, people are going to hear that and, oh yeah, of course Tom Brady's always had a great running back. Just like the AFC East was the worst division in all of sports, except it wasn't. And there's proof to that, but you can present that to people and they don't care. So, the narrative's going to keep going. And I say all that to say this: I hope he continues to play. If that's the case, I'm not going to continue to comment on what may or may not be happening between he and his family. That's not my business. I really don't know. But based on how he's playing now and based on the circumstances, yeah, I can see him continuing to play. And look, I mean, the longer he plays, the more impossible it is to reach what he's going to accomplish, even in this modern NFL. And people are like, oh, well, all Patrick Mahomes has to do is keep this pace up for another 15 years. And I'm like, do you hear what you're saying? Like, oh, he just has to do this almost longer than anyone else in the history of the game. That's fine. He'll just do it. And I think that's unfortunately the mentality a lot of people have. So of course he's in the GOAT discussion, but he's not really, John.
Yeah, he's only in his fifth year, so let the career play out. But I think the two biggest questions I have, first of all, who gets custody of you in the divorce? Is it Giselle or is it Tom? That's my
Do I have a choice? Question. Do I have a choice in this? Because I know my choice. It's not Giselle.
No, apparently Antonio Brown is already on that case.
Jesus.
So we'll see what happens with him. But the other thing is, are you boycotting tonight's game? Because you got to, you put that out there last night.
I did.
You're already sick of Russell Wilson. Now, the thing is, too, I went to Subway the other day, and I don't generally go to Subway. I mean, in the Boston area, we've got really good sub shops, but Subway has some nice things. And the new, what is it called? The Danger Witch, which is the Russell Wilson sandwich. I tried to get it. They don't have it yet, or at least the subway near me doesn't have it. Now, I will say this: it's kind of right on the East Boston Winthrop Revere border, which that area is still stuck in like 1989. So they may not even know who Russell Wilson is, but they didn't have that sandwich. But it looks pretty good, actually. I may have to order one if I can find a subway that carries it.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have to find someone to carry Russell Wilson because he clearly is not going to be able to get this done by himself. No, I did. I made a joke, and surprise, surprise, certain person responded with. Apparently, I have sentiments towards I don't know.
You're a racist. You're a member of MAGA.
I made a joke, and unfortunately, some of the Russell Wilson stands, particularly one individual, I'm sure folks will know exactly what I'm talking about, came at me, and what do I care? It's just a troll on Twitter. But I made a joke that I'm going to boycott Thursday Night Football because the NFL insists on putting the Broncos and Russell Wilson on primetime games, and it's like, look, I think a lot of people agree with me. Who the hell wants to watch this Broncos team right now? And it's like, I'm sorry if it makes you upset, Badgers fans, Wisconsin Badgers fans who seem to just obsess over Russell Wilson, but. I mean, I know people are kind of saying it jokingly, but did Russell Wilson waste Pete Carroll's prime? Maybe Pete was right to not let Russ cook. You know what I mean? I think there's certain limits to what he can do, and like I said, I think he's a pretty good quarterback. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's this GOAT trajectory or Hall of Fame pace type quarterback. I just don't, and I think we've seen enough from Russell Wilson to say, yeah, that's probably a fair assessment. It's not an insult. It's just a fair, honest assessment of who Russell Wilson is. And he's a guy who's a pretty good quarterback that I don't necessarily think you can there's I guess a couple ways to look at it. There's quarterbacks that you can win with, and there's quarterbacks you can win because of. And I don't think he's because of, just like Matt Stafford. Like, you can win with him. We saw it last year. But he's not going to win for you. And, obviously Tom Brady is one of those he'll win for you type situations. Trust me, we have a lot of evidence to say so. Look, a majority of quarterbacks are quarterbacks that, win with, not win, that's just how it is. I mean, the game's very complicated that way. But Russell Wilson's one of those guys that, give him an all-time great defense. Like the Seahawks. I think about how great the Seahawks team was. And someone brought it up on Twitter yesterday. And we all knew it, obviously, at the time. But they played 2 defensive sets. Think about all the great defenses now and how complicated and how much disguising they do. The Seahawks straight up lined up in cover 3 and just said, beat us. And most teams couldn't. Except for Tom Brady, of course. So, but yeah, I don't need to see Russell Wilson on primetime anymore. I'm good. So,
isn't there a limit? There's a limit. There literally is a limit to
primetime.
No, there is. I think it's 6.
No, 5. Actually, I think it was 17 games.
Into 1, right?
Yeah.
I think it's 6. I think Denver's used up all their primetime slots. It's just like I can't get them off my TV.
Come on, please spare us here. But
I get the Packers and the Cowboys. The Steelers are so bad that now they're in the 1 o'clock window a lot. But the Cowboys are on prime time a lot. It's the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Like, you could quarterback the Cowboys and they're going to get great ratings. The Packers, I don't know if it's the Packers or the fact that they've had 2 great quarterbacks for 30 years, so they're going to always pull ratings. And let's admit that Rodgers is a pretty interesting guy, right? Watching his games is definitely entertaining. You don't know what his reaction is going to be to drop passes or wrong routes or pick sixes or whatever it's going to be. He's must-watch TV, whether you like him or not. And, of course, Brady's going to pull ridiculous ratings. But Russell Wilson in Denver, all right.
Let's ride.
Let's ride.
That's right. All right. On that note, though, we are going to ride right out into the sunset on this show today. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow, Friday, for our big NFL pick show. And then, guess what, John? Basketball's just around the corner, my friend. So we're going to really start diving into that here soon over the next few weeks as we get prepared for the start of the season. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will talk to you tomorrow.